The Mariners have begun to beef up their farm. We'll talk a little bit about some of their first selections in the 2024 draft and then answer some of your questions here on Mailbag Monday. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, July 15th, 2024. This is Titan Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll be opening up the mailbag like we do here every Monday a little later on, but we're going to first react to some of the Mariners selections in the 2024 MLB Draft. At the time of this recording, we know about 6 of them. We'll have Joe Doyle join us on Thursday to break the entire class down as well. Before we get into today's show, shout out to our title sponsor, Tax Network USA. Did you know that it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? Don't wait. Reduce your tax debt and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals by calling 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/LOCKEDON. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. So day 2 of the 2024 MLB Draft is well underway as we are recording this. They are currently in the middle of the 7th round. So the Mariners are about to make their 7th round selection here pretty soon. But they've made 6 picks so far. So we're going to go over those. They kicked things off last night at pick number 15 with switch pitcher Jurrangelo Cijntje out of Mississippi State. Then in round 2, they got right-handed pitcher prep arm Ryan Sloan out of York Community High School in Illinois. And that's how they wrapped up day 1. Sloan was a guy that was widely considered to be a top 30 prospect in this draft. He ends up falling to them at number 55. Then they kicked off day 2 today with right-handed pitcher Hunter Cranton out of Kansas. He's going to be a reliever. They took him in round 3. Josh Caron, the catcher out of Nebraska, in round 4. Right-handed pitcher Charlie Bylinson out of Duke in round 5. And then very interesting pick in round 6, a catcher / right-handed pitcher. Now, two-way players are fairly common in the draft, and they end up, deciding to do one thing or the other. But it's pretty rare that you see a two-way player who's both a catcher and a pitcher. And that's Grant Knipp out of Campbell. Very, very interesting pick who hits for a lot of power. Maybe we'll talk about him in a second here. But let's start with Jurrangelo Cijntje, the Mariners' first pick of this draft. Really interesting selection, especially considering that Trey Yesavage, who I think a lot of people in the Mariners fandom wanted, was there at pick number 15, but they still went with Cijntje. And obviously a lot of intrigue, a lot of excitement about the switch pitching element with Cijntje. But do you think, Colby, that's something that will actually legitimately carry over into his pro career?
Not significantly. I think when you look at this guy as a left-handed pitcher, which is his weaker side, it's, low 90s fastball and an okay slider, and that's it. That's the whole arsenal there. And that's just not really valuable enough to continue to take away development time from him as a right-handed pitcher, where he is mid to upper 90s with a much better slider and cutter, better control and command, better, more deception. Like, he's just better flat out across the board as a right-handed pitcher. So, the Mariners have kind of said, like, yeah, that's up to him. We're going to let him decide that. I don't really believe them. I think they have a strong idea of what they want him to do and how they want him to develop. The Mariners don't really seem to me like an organization that's just like, however you feel. Like, we're going to take a lot of risk with our development and all that stuff. So the lefty thing to me doesn't really factor in at all. The fact that he's a switch pitcher, I don't give him more value because of that, because I just don't think that the left side of that is going to be all that terribly valuable. We might see it once in a while in very specific cases, but he's going to be developed as a right-handed pitcher. That is by far his best shot to be, worthy of the 15th pick. So it's a cool little thing, and I'm sure we'll get some video clips of him in the minors, throwing some lefties and throwing, a few innings left-handed or a few batters left-handed, but his development's primarily going to be as a right-handed pitcher because that's where he actually has major league upside.
You're going to hear a lot of comps to Marcus Stroman because of their shorter builds, but Cijntje still has like 4 inches on Stroman, but they're both highly athletic pitchers who are shorter relative to most pitchers. I think the comp, though, in general, and just in terms of what you kind of hope Cijntje ends up becoming, is pretty solid. Like middle of the rotation starter who occasionally looks like a number 2, maybe even sometimes a low end 1. So that's kind of the hope there with Cijntje, especially if he's just pitching from exclusively the right side. The stuff is really, really fascinating from the right side. Let's get into the second round pick here. Ryan Sloan, again, was widely considered to be like a top 30 pick in this draft class. He ends up going number 55. I think Pipeline even had him as high as 19 overall on their board. So this is going to be over slot. How much so? There have been rumors about that. We don't know how significant it is going to be, but it is going to be over slot. And we've already seen the Mariners make a couple of senior signs here on day 2 to help save them some bonus pool. So what do you think about Sloan overall, and then just about going over slot on him and how they're going to maneuver the rest of the draft because they've taken Sloan?
Sure. Sloan is has significantly more upside than Cijntje. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, it's Cijntje. Yeah.
Yeah.
According to the Mariners pronunciation guide, it's Cijntje.
Yeah. I like Sloan more. Now Cijntje is obviously safer. He's closer to the big leagues, and it's not to say that he's a bad pitcher. I have, currently I have Cijntje ranked higher than Sloan in my preliminary ranks, which obviously we're going to wait till after the deadline to officially, re-release our prospect ranks. But this is a guy who's 18 years old, high schooler, 6'5", 220 already. He has a big time fastball. He's touched 100. And interestingly enough, as a high school arm, his best secondary is a changeup, which is already above average. He throws a ton of strikes. It's a very repeatable delivery, which is good. At 6'5", that young, typically sometimes it takes a while to kind of gain control of your, I think we all remember being clumsy teenagers, but he's very well put together. It's a great build. It's a really good fastball, really good changeup. The slider is certainly very promising as well. So this is a guy who, with the strike throwing he already has, with the stuff that he already has, it's very easy to predict him to be a, number 2 type of starter or top of the rotation type of arm. And obviously, the goal is that he'll get better. And based on what we know about the Mariners player development staff, he's going to get better and he's going to mature. He's better than Michael Morales. He's better than Sam Carlson, some of the other high school arms they've kind of tried to do this over slot thing with. He's better than they ever were. He's better now than when they were drafted. Like, there is legitimate, ceiling here of a number 1 starter, like a true ace. He has the build, he has the stuff, he has the strike throwing ability. It's all there for him. In general, I don't love going, playing the slot game, the over slot. Like, if you want to do it a little bit here and there, fine, whatever. And the Mariners have certainly done that. I don't love it when it's, so it's going to be so much over slot. The number we're hearing is $4 million to get Sloan. And that is like 20th overall pick money. And they're probably not going to save any money on Cijntje, maybe some, but he's a sophomore, so he has a lot of leverage there. Yeah. So basically,
and the slot at pick 55 was 1.64 million. So
yeah, so they have to make up a significant chunk of money. So I don't love when they do that because it takes away from the strength or the depth of the rest of your class. And you got to take shots on guys who, probably 8th, 9th, 10th round picks. And now you're taking them in the 3rd, 4th round. So I typically don't love it. I do really like Sloan a lot, though. So, it's just one of those things where it's like, it puts a lot of pressure on your top 2 guys to really hit and get to the big leagues. And the Mariners have tried this once, like this style where they had to get really aggressive in saving their bonus pool money back in their first draft. And that was Evan White and Sam Carlson. They got nothing out of that draft class. So there's a little bit of risk here for that, but the Mariners, they're better at player development now than they were then. They're better at scouting than they were then. They're, they have this track record now that they didn't have back then. So you kind of trust them with all this stuff. But at the end of the day, like, it's not my favorite. It's not how I would do things. I would be more of a, kind of a balance, and then occasionally take a shot on a slightly over slot guy like they did last year. Now, last year they had 3 first-round picks, so it's a little hard to compare, but whatever. It's not my favorite thing. It's not my favorite strategy in the draft. I want as many bites at the apple as I can get. But again, if they think Sloan is like a number 2, number 1 type of starter, who could move pretty quick for a high school arm, then you can understand why they might think it's worth taking that shot. And Sloan definitely has that upside.
So the Mariners have made their 7th round selection. It is right-handed reliever Brock Moore out of Oregon. This is another money saver for them. He's a senior. MLB.com has a write-up here on him. 94 to 97 on the fastball, 82 to 85 mile per hour slider with some tilt, and a firm changeup that sits 85 to 88 miles per hour. They say repertoire could give him the chance to start, though command issues might impede that, with a role as a multi-inning reliever more likely. So not sure if he was invited to the combine, because that does impact how much you can offer him. But if not, I would assume this is probably somewhere in like the $20,000 range, and in an effort to save more money to give to Ryan Sloan. But yeah, throw Brock Moore into the mix here in the group of day 2 picks for the Mariners to go along with Cranton and Karen and Bylinson and Nip. Who of those guys fascinates you with what you've learned about them so far?
Probably the 3rd round pick, the reliever from Kansas. It is a plus fastball, like plus fastball up to 100. He's actually, gets he was top percentile in whiff on the fastball, both inside and outside of the zone. So he gets swings and misses in the zone with the fastball. He gets guys to chase the fastball. Slider's pretty good as well. There's a shot he's big league ready. Like, there's pretty good shot, decent shot. He could get big league hitters out tomorrow if you needed him to, but he's almost certainly going to be the first guy in this draft class to make his debut for the Mariners. Could be as early as next year. We'll see how they want to use him. He only threw 28 innings this last year, something like that. There's a pretty good shot that we see him down in Modesto or even Everett this summer. And that fastball slider combo is really tantalizing. It is it is plus fastball value, and that gives him a really good shot to get big league hitters out very, very soon. So for a 3rd round pick and for like a senior sign, just trying to save some money, that's a heck of a pick, because you do have a potential high leverage reliever here, and the floor is probably a middle guy. So I like it. I like that pick quite a bit.
Yeah. So, he's someone that we could see relatively soon at the big league level if it all comes together for him. Also really like the Josh Karen pick. That's legitimate power to all fields, and there's a chance that he can stick behind the plate. The Grant Nip pick is really interesting because, again, a two-way player who's a catcher and a right-handed arm, and apparently there's legitimate upside on both fronts. He has real power. He hits tanks. He hit 18 home runs and I think 139 at bats, plate appearances, what have you. Yeah. He ranked 4th in the entire country in average exit velocity this year per Joe Doyle of Future Stars series. And then he's apparently also a legitimate option out of the bullpen. Pretty big arm out of the bullpen. So dude is strong. So that's a fun one to keep an eye on for sure. Like I said, we're going to have Joe Doyle on the show on Thursday to break down the entire class. We might also kind of just talk about the class overall on Wednesday. We're not going to be doing a show tomorrow, but on Wednesday, we're going to be doing our trade deadline plan, but maybe we'll carve out some time to talk about the class as a whole now that we'll have the full picture by then. But now we are going to answer some of your questions here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks and Tax Network USA. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And a general rule of thumb here, if they breathe air and they're scheduled to pitch against the Mariners, it's probably a good idea to pick more on their strikeouts. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Here on Locked On Mariners, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000. That's 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. See the link in this episode description. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Mariners will kick off the second half of the season on Friday against the Astros. You can catch all the action on the Mariners hometown broadcast of SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. All right, let's get into your questions. It is Mailbag Monday after all. This one comes from Garrett. Are there rules for switch pitchers? Can they switch arms from batter to batter? If so, when facing a switch hitter, who has to decide first, the pitcher or hitter? I know it's unlikely he gets to the bigs, talking about Cijntje, as a switch pitcher. Just curious on the rules. So yeah, back when Pat Venditti, former Mariners pitcher, former A's pitcher, who also was a switch pitcher, was doing his thing, Major League Baseball implemented a rule where Venditti had to signal to the umpire and to the batter before the at-bat started which side he was going to pitch from, and he could not change during the at-bat, but he could change in between at-bats. So next hitter comes up, I'm going to throw left. All right.
Yeah,
now you have to throw
left hand or his right hand.
Yep. Yep. And then he switches his glove and that's it. So that's how I would assume it's going to stay that way if Cijntje were to come up and he actually is switch pitching.
Right. And like, just to clarify, if you declare lefty, right, and the guy goes up there for one pitch and you throw a ball or whatever, and then the manager's like, now I'm going to go right-handed because he just declared left-handed. No, you can change. If the hitter changes in the middle of the at-bat, you can change. You're allowed to change back, right? So once the hitter is announced, you have to declare. If a new hitter gets announced, you can declare the other hand or whatever. So there's no like tricky thing that the opposing manager can do to get the better platoon split. So if he changes batters in the middle of an at-bat, you can change your handedness.
Next question here from Jeff. What made them choose Cijntje over Trey Yesavage? This is a question I was asking myself last night, and I think you were as well, Colby, because Trey Yesavage was there. We were hoping, we were praying that Trey Yesavage would get to number 15, and he did, and then they didn't take him.
Apparently, the Mariners don't like Logan Gilbert clones.
I have to imagine, though, with how little like high-end college pitching talent was in this draft, the fact that he still fell to pick number 20 to the Blue Jays in this particular class with that profile, with a profile that may find himself in the big leagues sometime later next year, something had to be flagged in his profile by the Mariners and some other teams, or maybe it's also because they were able to save a little bit of money on Cijntje to help them facilitate the Sloan deal. I don't know, but it does seem like something is off there with the fact that he ended up going to 20 when he was projected anywhere from like 8 to 15 for most of the draft process.
Ty, you know what's better than one Logan Gilbert?
Two Logan Gilberts.
Yeah. Good luck. Jerry's cooked. That's the explanation, obviously.
Totally. Yeah.
No, look, it's one of those things where like, I don't have to like it, and I don't. I would rather have Yesavage.
Sure.
I don't have to like it, but I have to give them the benefit of the doubt on making this call because they're really
arguably have the best starting rotation in baseball right now with 4 homegrown pitchers.
Right.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
And let's not pretend they didn't get something out of Luis Castillo that the Reds didn't either. So like, they're really good at this.
Yeah.
Like, so if they're telling me that this guy's better, and maybe all it is, maybe what it is that they had Yesavage is like a 55, and they have Cijntje.
Cijntje.
Right? Yeah,
Cijntje.
I'm gonna lock it down.
You'll get used to it
Eventually. Yes. Maybe he's like a 53.5, but Cijntje was willing to take like 300 grand less than Yesavage, and it's like, okay, well, that's 300 grand. So like, if the difference is only that, and you're saving money that secures Sloan, then it's like, hey, do you want, Yesavage and this guy we could just draft in the second at slot, or do we want Sloan and Cijntje? Because like, if they taken Sloan in the first and Cijntje in the second, that would have been a totally viable play too. Like, people would have been like, yeah, no, that's great. So, sometimes it's not about you take the best player. It's you take the best player that you think you can develop that fits with what you want to do with the rest of your draft. So it's not always just simple as like best player available. So
yeah,
it's possible the Mariners just like Cijntje better. Like, that is totally possible. And there's some upside play here. The arm slot's a little better. I think there's some concerns that, Yesavage might have to miss some time. For all we know, he got flagged something medical, right? And it just don't want to risk it. So there's a lot of things we can't possibly know that factor into this decision. Again, I would have preferred Yesavage. That's the guy I wanted. He would have been the number 3 prospect in the Mariners system for me the minute he signed. Like, that's how much I like that guy. And I feel like he could be in the big leagues next year. Cijntje, probably not going to be in the big leagues next year. Probably not the year after. Maybe, but probably not. But he's younger. There's a little bit more upside play here. And the floor is probably the same, which is, number 4 starter type of arm. And so if they feel it's really that close, and maybe they say, maybe Yesavage wanted over slot. Maybe he, wanted slot and Cijntje wanted under slot. And that's how you could get, there's just so many factors that we do not know. Right. Maybe we get a hint when these guys sign, but until then, right now, it's not an egregious decision. Like, it's not like idiotic or anything like that. It's not terrible. Is it the decision I would make? No. Do I trust the Mariners to make that decision and make a pretty good one? Yeah, I think you have to at this point.
Yeah. All right. We're going to answer a couple more of your questions here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. I know I'm saying the obvious here, but I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, unfortunately, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's LOCKDON, and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Once again, Mariners will kick off the second half of the season on Friday against the Astros. You can catch all the action on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. And we are inching closer to the Mariners' 8th round selection. So if they make that before we get out of here, we'll tell you who that is. And I can guarantee you that we won't know who it is, so we won't be able to give you any information beyond their name and where they went to school and their position. And maybe if there's a write-up about them on MLB.com here, I'll read that to you. But that's about as far as we'll go with that. But again, we'll talk more about the draft probably on Wednesday, and then for sure on Thursday with Joe Doyle. All right. So Matthew Johnson wants to know, the Mariners were rumored to have talks about trading a starting pitcher at last year's deadline. Given their struggles offensively, what are the chances they entertain the idea of trading a starting pitcher at this year's deadline for an impact bat? Or two, if you're talking about Brian Wu, I would say the chances are less than 1%. Not 0, but less than 1%. Yeah.
Unless they're getting a starting pitcher back in that trade. But even then, I would say less than 5%. Like, I don't think they're going to trade Wu or Miller. If you told me, like, hey, one of these 5 guys is going to be traded before they hit free agency, who do you think is the most likely one to be traded before their free agent years? I would actually pick Luis Castillo. But we know Castillo's not getting traded this summer either. So I would say it is near 0 like much closer to 0 than even 1%, that the Mariners are trading anybody out of their starting rotation this summer. Just it's not going to happen. So
I think Emerson Hancock could get traded.
Sure,
for a couple of reasons. I think there's value in that. Like, look, he's probably at best a number 4, right? Mm-hmm. At his very best, he's probably a number 4. But he could still, I think, start in 20 rotations right now in Major League Baseball, at least.
A lot of teams need pitching.
Yeah. So there's quite a bit of value in that. He also only has one more in-season option left, so you can only call him up one more time this season. And now Logan Evans is starting again. So Evans might be the guy that they call upon now to make spot starts for the remainder of the year. So I could see Hancock getting dealt for sure at the deadline.
Yeah, but in terms of like guys who are currently in their rotation,
it
is, like I said, it's closer to 0% than even 1%.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
All right, next question here from Tucker. Tucker wants to know, why is Lazaro Montes considered so much better of a prospect than Michael Arroyo? They were very close in terms of WRC plus and Modesto, and now Arroyo is playing much better in Everett, plus he has much better positional value. What do you think, Colby?
Laz's bat and his power project to be significantly better than Arroyo. So it's like, look, Arroyo, is he going to play shortstop? No. Is he going to play center field? No. He's probably second base or a third baseman. If he's a third baseman, there's some real question about whether or not the power translates there enough for him to play every day. But there's also questions about whether he's going to maintain athleticism well enough to play up the middle, which would be second base. So it's one of those things where the bat fits better at second base as it presents now. Things can change pretty significantly. In fact,
he's hitting for way more power this year.
Right.
Though,
I was going to say Arroyo's already changed his profile a little bit because the power has arrived. So could he have enough power to play third? Yeah, absolutely he could. Does he right now? Does he project to right now? It's fringy. It's really fringy. So, does he project to stay at second base as of right now? Sure. But if he gets bigger and stronger to add more power, he probably loses some athleticism. So, basically it's because the industry pretty unanimously has decided that Lazaro Montes' bat has a chance to be really special. 150 WRC plus type of stuff, like legitimately elite hitter. Mm-hmm. Montes has a chance to do that. And the chance that exists is so much, it's like, it carries so much value to a lot of people, pretty much the entire game, really, that it's going to overshadow just about everything else that somebody like Arroyo, who's probably going to top out at like a 120 WRC plus type of bat, like, that is just so much, that extra 30% value you get at the plate is so much more valuable to most people than maybe being able to play second or third base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just an upside thing. It really is. Like, and I don't think anybody thinks that Montes isn't going to hit his way to the majors. Like, he's going to get there eventually and he's going to hit some. It's just a matter of, is he an elite hitter or is he an okay, good hitter? And that will change his profile pretty vastly, because if he's a DH only type or if he's a first base only type and he's just a good hitter, he's not as valuable as, a good hitting second baseman. If he's an elite hitter, if he's a 150, 160 WRC plus guy,
if he actually is Yordan Alvarez, right?
Sure. You'd rather have Yordan Alvarez than Nico Horner, right? So that's kind of the idea behind it. And I mean, I like Arroyo a lot too. I think he's very underrated. He's still in my top 10, even after the guys the Mariners have added today. That's just, and he was 10 when we did our last re-rank. So like, to me, he's done a lot to raise his value. Might get traded because of it, but that's just the way it goes. I like Arroyo a lot, but yeah, Laz's bat, like just the upside on his bat alone is so valuable to teams and to, front off, that they would rather take the shot on the bat, even though Arroyo's a good prospect himself.
And the fact that he's played only 14 games in high A, and Baseball America already has him ranked in the top 30 of all prospects in the game right now, that says a lot about how people in the industry feel about how special that bat truly is. Because like, we're not even talking about he hasn't even had success at the high A level. Like you said in your question here, like the WRC plus for Montes is not good so far, and down in Everett, it's 76 down in Everett right now. But the fact that like he hasn't succeeded at high A, double A, etc. They're really just basing this off of what he's done down in Modesto and what they've seen out of that bat down in Modesto. Just tells you how special they think that bat truly is. D Panky wants to know, coming off of last year and being a core piece in his prime, is JP arguably the biggest disappointment so far this season given the expectations? His OPS at home is only 494 and just 561 for July prior to Sunday's game. I would still say, even though that Julio's been better this month, yeah, it's Julio. Julio's still the biggest disappointment of the year.
It's Julio, and it's not close.
Yeah.
Because it's real easy to look at what JP did last year and say that's the outlier.
Right.
Because it has been. You know, that's something that JP's never done before, never sustained for an entire season like he did last year.
Never even come close to. Yeah.
No. And so, like, is JP been disappointing this year? Yeah, even by his own standard, like his normal standard, average standard. Yeah, I think he's been disappointing, but I think, you know, expecting him to put up another, what was it, 130 WRC plus last year? Like the only shortstop.
Yeah, we talked about this in the offseason.
Right.
Yeah.
The only shortstop in the American League who had a higher WRC plus than him was Corey Seager. It's pretty easy to point to that and say that's the outlier. Yeah. So yeah, to me, the answer here is Julio, because he's not even sniffing like what we thought his floor was as a major leaguer. So Julio is by far the most disappointing player. Does that mean JP hasn't been disappointing? No, he has been. Absolutely. It's just biggest. No, it's the buck stops with Julio always. You're the franchise player. You got to play better than he has in the first half. It's really that simple.
Yeah. 100%. So the Cubs are on the clock right now. Oh, Cubs just made their pick. So the Mariners are on the clock right now. We'll see who they pick, and then we'll get out of here.
Maverick Rizzi.
Maverick Rizzi, baby. That would be great. Name. Step aside, Vanilla Missile. There's a new sheriff in town in terms of meme prospects. We'll see, though. Apparently, the Mariners, according to both Joe Doyle and Oliver Bochter of Future Star Series, the Mariners have saved enough money here to pay for Ryan Sloan and then some. So they might actually go big here and go over slot on a player either with this pick or maybe the 9th round pick. So sure. This could be interesting.
Right. Rounds 2 through 10 is over slot works. And then after on day 3, anything over $125,000 counts towards your signing, your bonus pool money. Yeah. So if you're going to go over slot on somebody, it's going to be with one of these next 3 picks.
Yeah. So we'll see.
We'll see what they do with this one. Will Riley, pitcher from VMI, Virginia Military Institute.
Okay. And there is no write up on him. So yeah. So we have nothing for you. Sorry, folks.
Might be another money. Probably looks like another money saver would be my guess.
Yeah. He's a senior, right-handed pitcher. Yep. He is 22 years old. So a younger senior, at least. Like he's not one of these 24, 25-year-old dudes. But yeah, senior sign. So that's going to be another money saver. That slot value at pick 243 is $212,000. So potentially saving even more money here for a bigger swing in the next couple rounds. We'll see.
Could be.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for our show. Before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dane Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And also, while you're at it, check out Locked On Seahawks and get ready for Seahawks training camp with Corbin Smith and the gang. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.